today, we're going to give you an early look at the next step of that journey with ARC-AGI-2. Now, to take us through what's coming up next, I want to bring up the creator of ARC-AGI, Francois Chollet, to tell us all about ARC-AGI-2.
Thank you, Greg. All right, so up until last year, up until 2024, our field was obsessed with the idea that general intelligence would spontaneously emerge from cramming more and more data into bigger and bigger models. So we were confusing skill and knowledge, which is static and task-specific, with general fluid intelligence, which is really the ability to make sense of something you've never seen before on the fly. And so back in 2019, to highlight this difference between skill and general intelligence and to challenge deep learning as a paradigm, I released the abstraction reasoning corpus, or ARC-AGI-1 specifically. And since then, ARC-AGI-1 has really completely resisted the pre-training scaling paradigm. So from its release back in 2019 to now, there's been a roughly 50,000x scale-up of base LLMs. And we went from scores of 0 on ARC-1 to about 10%. And that's not very high because every one of you in this room would score at least 95, like 95 plus. So it turns out that in order to crack general fluid intelligence, we needed better ideas beyond just scaling up what we're already doing. And then in 2024, everything changed. The AI research community, and probably many of you in this room, started pivoting towards a different kind of paradigm, test and adaptation. And this wasn't about just regurgitating memorized skills anymore. This was really about making sense of something, some task you've never seen before on the fly. And all of a sudden, we started seeing some really, really good scores on ARC-1 with techniques like test time training, program synthesis, chain of thought synthesis. And in particular, the O3 model, so still unreleased at this time from OpenAI, started scoring at human level. And by the way, one thing that's really important to note here is that this is a profound shift, a profound paradigm switch. And ARC-AGI was really maybe the only benchmark, definitely one of the only benchmarks that actually provided a strong signal that something was going on, that something had really changed. So you may ask, okay, so O3 is scoring at human level on ARC-AGI. Does it mean we have AGI today? Well, it's not exactly what the data tells you. If you look at this graph, what you see is that ARC-AGI-1 was a binary benchmark. It only really gives you two modes. So either you have no fluid intelligence and you score really low, or you have some fluid intelligence and instantly you score extremely high. And there's just not much in between, which is why you're seeing this 0 to 1 step function here. And of course, it actually saturates well below human level fluid intelligence. And any of you would score within noise distance of 100%. So to better capture the difference between current levels of fluid intelligence in AI. And by the way, we definitely have systems now that truly exhibit genuine fluid intelligence. And so to measure the difference between AI fluid intelligence and human fluid intelligence, we need a more sensitive measure with more useful bandwidths. And we've been working on exactly that tool for the past couple of years, and that's ARC-AGI-2. So in 2019, ARC-AGI-1 was challenging the deep learning paradigm. And now, in 2025, we are challenging this test time adaptation. We are challenging the systems that reason and adapt at test time. So we fixed and upgraded many things in ARC-2. So one of the flaws of V1 was that it wasn't difficulty calibrated, and we didn't really know how well people performed on these tasks. We didn't have extensive first-party data. So we fixed that in ARC-2. To start with, we only kept tasks that could be solved by at least 2 people among the hundreds of people that we tested. So each task was seen by, on average, about 7 people. And each of our 3 eval sets, like the public eval, the private eval, the semi-private eval, they're all entirely difficulty calibrated. So they're all exactly as difficult when it comes to our human test takers. So on average, one test taker from our sample would solve about 60% of each set. And if you take a small panel of them, like about 10, with majority voting, you get to 100%. So all of these tasks are feasible by people. And we know this because we tested 400 people firsthand, in person in San Diego, over multiple days, over many sessions. And we're not talking about people who have physics PhDs here. We already recruited random people. We've got Uber drivers, UCDS students, people who were unemployed. So we really know that these tasks are feasible by regular folks. And on average, one test taker took about 5 minutes to solve one task. Another big change is the level of sophistication of the tasks. So a significant flaw of ARC-1 was that it was easily brute forceable. So what does that mean? Well, for instance, back in 2020, after the very first Kaggle competition on ARC, we realized that if you assembled all the entries in the competition, they could solve half of the private test set. And that back then, all the submissions were basically just doing basic brute force program search, and they were doing it with very low compute budget. So what that told you is that half of the private test set was easy to brute force and really provided only very weak signal about fluid intelligence. That's a significant flaw. So with ARC-2, we completely fixed it. If you use the same kind of technique on ARC-2, you get 0%. And concretely, what this means is that if you look at most ARC-1 tasks, typically you can figure out what's going on instantly without having to think about it. It's almost pattern recognition. Meanwhile, with ARC-2, you always have to do at least some amount of deliberate thinking. It's not going to be instantly obvious what the solution is. And remember that on average, our human test takers took 5 minutes per task. So there's a lot going on here. So qualitatively, how are these tasks actually different? So I'm going to show you a few tasks from the ARC-2 public set, public eval. And these are tasks where the large majority of the human test takers figured out the answer, but no AI system that we tested could solve it. So one thing you will see a lot in ARC-2 is this notion of symbolic interpretation, where you have some kind of symbol that is assigned meaning within the context of a task. And like here, for instance, you have these rectangles, these color rectangles with holes in them, which associates a color with a number of holes in a shape, in a pretzel. And as it turns out, current frontier models, they're really good at recognizing symbols that they've seen before. They're not very good at picking up a new meaning that's being assigned in context like this. Another thing you will see a lot in ARC-2 is multi-step compositional reasoning, which is this idea that instead of having one rule that you just apply once and that solves the task, you're going to have to apply the same rule repeatedly, and each new step is going to depend on the output of the previous step. Or maybe you have 2 different rules and they interact with each other. Like here, for instance, in order to place one object, you need to have already placed the previous one. If you just look at the input, there's basically no way to predict where one given object is going to land in the output without actually going through this sequence of object placement steps. And then there's contextual rule application. So this one's pretty basic. It's the idea that you're going to add a bit of control flow hop to the reasoning chain. So here, for instance, you have some squares and you must stack them on the sides. And frontier models can actually figure out that this is about stacking squares on the side. But the part that's really difficult to pick up is the fact that the side you should choose is gated on the color of the contour. So it's this added control flow step that's apparently still very challenging. So how well do current AI models score on ARC-2? Well, base LLMs, and by the way, so we tested many more models than just the ones listed here, but they all score a 0. which is significantly lower than what you got on ARC-1. So what that tells you is that these tasks simply cannot be approached via memorization alone. And if you look at what's known as reasoning models that are generating a single chain of thought, models like R1, for instance, or 3 Mini, they're not actually doing much better. They're scoring about 1%, somewhere between 0 and 1.5. And that really tells you that to solve these tasks, you need to be doing test and adaptation. And sure, like generating one chain of thought gives you some degree of adaptation. It's extremely weak. It's mostly a static model. And now if you look at models that are actually doing test and adaptation, well, for instance, the best model that entered the competition last year is scoring 3.5%. And this is a model that's using a combination of test time training and program synthesis. It's a model that's designed entirely to solve ARC and trained entirely to solve ARC, to solve these type of tasks. And there's a new model that does test time search, and that's highly anticipated. That's probably the smartest model in the world today. It's O3. So how far can O3 go? Well, we don't have exact data here because we don't have access to the model currently, unfortunately. But what we do have is that, so some of the tasks that we tried O3 on in ARC-1 actually made it into ARC-2. So based on that, we can provide an estimate. We think O3 on the low compute settings is probably going to score somewhere between 4 and 5%. So low compute settings is still, in the vicinity of like $30 to $100 per task. And when it comes to O3 on the high compute settings, when we are talking about more like somewhere between 3,000 to maybe 20,000 per task in compute cost, we really don't know what it might score, but my guess, based on the data available, would be about 15%. So one thing I really want you to keep in mind is that ARC-AGI is not meant to be a test of whether we have AGI or not today. That's not the point. It's a tool to direct the attention of the research community towards what we see as the most important unsolved bottlenecks on the path to AGI. So it's really not the destination, and solving it is not the goal. It's more like an arrow that's pointing you in the right direction. And to be clear, it actually started out as being just called ARC, the abstraction reasoning corpus. We kind of had to add the AGI suffix to differentiate it from the other eval that's also named ARC, unfortunately. And so, of course, ARC-AGI is also this interesting playground to test few-shot reasoning systems, like program synthesis systems or chain of thought synthesis system. And that's one of the reasons why it really took off last year, that there was a need for this kind of playground, and there wasn't one before. So on the topic of ARC-AGI not being an acid test for AGI, one thing I want to really make clear is that it is possible to brute force ARC-2 the same way it was possible to brute force ARC-1. So of course, ARC-2 is far less brute forceable than ARC-1, but ultimately, it is a verifiable domain. So if you're running a deep enough program search process with a flexible enough DSL, you will, in fact, crack it. It's probably going to cost you billions and billions of dollars in compute cost. But in theory, in principle, it is possible. So the question is not really, can you do it? Of course you can. The question is, how efficiently can you do it? And that's not just a question of economics. We really think that efficiency is at the heart of intelligence. Intelligence is not just about displaying some skill at some task. It's about how efficiently you can acquire the skills and deploy these skills, both data efficiency and compute efficiency. Because if you're looking at these models that do test time search, it's always possible to buy higher performance by simply spending more. Like the models that are in blue there, it's actually the same model at different compute budgets, and same for the red line over there. So going forward, we're always going to be reporting ARC-AGI scores on these 2D plots, with on one axis the cost per task, on the other axis the score. And really, your IQ, the model of your IQ, the IQ of your model is not just where you land on the y-axis, it's where you land on the plot. And what we should be targeting is this top left corner here. That's where human intelligence is. Human intelligence is not just, it's not just extremely adaptable. Humans have very high fluid intelligence. It's also extremely energy efficient. So until we get to this top left corner, we don't really have human level intelligence. And so last year in 2024, we launched ARC-Prize, and ARC-Prize was successful beyond what we were hoping at the time. On Kaggle, we had 1,500 teams that entered the competition. On the paper track, we got over 40 really cool papers and with some really innovative ideas in there. So it's also been a big part of the mindset shift last year beyond this pre-training scaling paradigm and into the test time adaptation paradigm. And in fact, so as of late last year, there were 7 or 8 startups that were using ARC-AGI-1 as their primary benchmark to make progress towards AGI. And today, ARC-Prize is back. So we are launching ARC-Prize 2025 on Monday. So it's based on the V2 dataset. And so like last year, you have 2 tracks. There's the main track on Kaggle, where your model must be self-contained. You get no internet access. Your model has access to about $50 worth of compute to solve 120 tasks, so very limited resources. It's basically a VM with 2 V100s, and it can run for up to 12 hours. And we're also reopening the public track, the public leaderboard. So this one is really for continuous benchmarking of commercial frontier models and any approach that builds on top of commercial frontier models. So for this one, there's no prize, and it's open to any approach that's going to cost less than $10,000 of compute to solve 120 tasks. So the goal here is really to come up to incentivize the emergence of an efficient open source solution to ARC-AGI. And history has shown us that prize competitions like this one were really capable of delivering an outsized return on investment. They can spark inspiration. They can focus the collective intelligence of the research community on one well-defined, well-scoped, tractable problem and trigger actual breakthroughs. So we are hoping that ARC-Prize 2025 will play this role and will lead to some really cool breakthroughs this year and accelerate the timeline to AGI. One last thing I want to bring up, ARC-AGI-3. So we've started work on ARC-AGI-3. And ARC-AGI-3 is moving beyond the static like input to output pair format of ARC-2. So it's trying to assess new cognitive abilities beyond just fluid intelligence. We're looking at exploration, efficient exploration and data gathering. We're looking at goal setting, interactive skill acquisition, and so on. So it's going to be a set of like mini games, basically like these interactive environments with a fixed input space, a fixed output space, and you must explore what you're trying to do. When you're dropped into this environment, you don't know what the actions do. You don't know what sort of concepts you're going to encounter or what the gameplay is going to be like. You don't even know what the goal is. So you must figure out all of these things on the fly. And efficiency is a central part of how we're going to grade models. You're not just graded on whether you can do the task, because of course it's always possible to brute force the action space. You're actually graded on the action efficiency with which you can solve the task. And we're going to be targeting human levels of action efficiency. And of course, humans are extremely good at these things. So we are targeting an early 2026 launch for ARC-3. And if you want to help with our mission, there are 2 things you can do. So first, you can work with us to do early testing of your new reasoning models on ARC-1 and 2. And you can add your ARC scores to your model cards. So ARC is a benchmark that's really uniquely suited to evaluate the fluid intelligence, the adaptability of a model. And in fact, it was one of the only benchmarks that really spotted O3 as being in an entirely different league last December. No other benchmarks could do that. Benchmarks were saturating and they could not differentiate between actual fluid intelligence and just brute force scaling. And the only other benchmark where O3 was showing game-changing results was frontier math, where it could do 20%. But the big difference between frontier math and ARC-AGI is that to solve even one problem in frontier math, you need to be a mathematics PhD, basically, whereas ARC-AGI tasks are actually solvable by completely irregular folks. It's not a benchmark of specialized skill, it's not a benchmark of specialized knowledge, it's really a benchmark of pure fluid intelligence. Another thing you can do is you can help build V3. So we are starting a benchmark advisory committee for V3, so to make sure that V3 is as robust, as useful as it can be. And so if you're passionate about helping shape the future of AGI evals, you can apply, you can contribute your expertise, you can tell us what you want to see tested, like things like, oh, I'm interested in hidden state, for instance. So give us your feedback. We're still very, very early in the design and development. And that's it from me. So thanks a lot. So big takeaways, we are launching the version 2 of the benchmark, ARC-AGI-2. We're launching ARC Prize 2025, the new competition for this year, on Monday, and we have started work on ARC-3. So if you want to join forces and help us build ARC-3, get in touch. Thank you.